The beat goes on.
And the bead goes on. Of course, I'm Jason French, curator of collections here at Behringer-Crawford Museum. We're here in our bead exhibit and in the trade bead room. And I'm here with one of our wonderful collectors that was gracious enough to loan us artifacts for this exhibit. This is Wendell Williams, and he brought us a number of Native American artifacts. And I'd like him to kind of explain, in this case, what here we're looking at that he brought us, and just kind of, Wendell, what do we got here? What's this shirt?
Well, the shirt is a crow or Absaroka styled shirt. It is made from brain tan buckskin, which, if you're interested, the whole idea behind brain tanning is that every animal on the planet has enough brains to tan its own skin. And the beadwork was done in what they call a squat stitch style, which was all basically separately sewn on. It wasn't loomed or anything of that type. And the shirt comes from the late 1800s. You can tell that mostly by the colors of the beads, which are called greasy beads, because they all have, they're not a vibrant modern type color. They look like they're greasy. The fringe, basically the fringe is on there. There are two schools of thought for fringe. There's one school of thought where the fringe is that it's there to break up a line on the planes so that you don't see a particular shape. My school of thought is it's there to dissipate rain and water. Excuse me. The water leaches out into the fringe and drips off, air dries much quicker than if you didn't have it. That's it.
Well, that is, I had never heard that with fringe, and that actually makes a lot of sense. So what do we've got some other interesting things here in this case. This is a fly swat?
That is correct. Natives throughout the world, not just on this continent, always look to nature for the answers for everything. And the answers to the fly problem and insect problem was the same as the horses and the deer and anything else. They swat their tails. And that's basically what that is a piece of elk antler, and actually the plume is a Prussian military officer's helmet.
Oh, wow. So that's
that orange is the color that the Prussians dyed that to put on the top of a plume on a helmet.
Now the beads on that are not glass beads, right? They're something else. Are those quill?
That's quill work. Those are porcupine quills. Those are dyed with vegetable dyes and then softened in the mouth of the woman or man. Mostly the women did this work. Softened enough in their mouth that they could bend them, and then as they dried, they held that particular shape.
Well, that's great. So it's a different kind of ornamental work.
Yes.
It's because they're hollow. It can be kind of like a bead work, but it's made from porcupine quills. So we've got another piece of elk antler here. It looks like, and some beading on that. What is that?
That is a riding quirt. Basically, it's the same thing that our jockeys on the racetracks use today. You swat the horse on the rump, and the horse runs faster.
Okay. How old do you think it is? Is it?
That again is that's late 1800s. It is regular seed beads with what they call a white heart. On the perimeter of the beadwork, the white hearts had that name because they were basically a blood red colored bead, glass bead that you could actually see through, but the center of the bead was snow white, and it gave the bead a very unusual opaque appearance.
Oh, wow. Now, we've also got a beautiful pair of moccasins here. What are we looking at there?
Those are Shoshone moccasins. Those are very early 1900s. Those were reservation period, of course. You can see the difference in the colors of the beads as compared to the earlier beads on the shirt. The beads on the moccasins are not greasy beads. Those are what we call modern color beads. If you look on the bag behind the moccasins, you can actually see the difference in the colors of the blues and the reds. I know I'm jumping the gun here, but actually if you look on the ration ticket bag, those reds are actually very, very tiny seeded white hearts.
Oh, wow. So that you said that's a ration ticket bag. What is the story behind that?
During the reservation period, the natives, no matter who they were not allowed to have weapons. They weren't even allowed to have their bows and quivers, certainly not guns or anything that they were able to hunt with. They were expected to either A, farm, which very few were able to do that, especially where the reservations were located. So they were given ration tickets, where once a week they would go to the Indian store or white man's store, and they would trade their ration tickets for food, for things they needed. Just basically, it was a food stamp bag.
Okay. So that just was a way to keep all of your tickets together so you didn't lose them.
That's right.
And you would have it to carry so you knew where everything was. And it's beautifully done. Has that got little tin cones on it?
Those are tin cones. The only thing that they serve is that they just make a nice tinkly little sound when you're walking along with that bag tied to your belt. They just jingle, and most of the Western tribes love those things. Eastern tribes weren't really into the big long fringe like the Westerns were, but to each his own.
Yeah, it's a beautiful bag. So you also brought us one more really spectacular artifact that you've loaned for this exhibit, and it's over here. Can you tell me about this blanket and these beautiful this beaded band on it?
Well, that is a Blackfoot firstborn blanket that's on an old Pendleton Navy blue blanket. The chevrons and the strip are all sewn on. The strip is done in a squaw stitch as well as all the chevrons. An interesting story about that blanket. I got that blanket when I was in my 20s. I'm now 70. And the blanket was taken from me. Not physically taken, it just disappeared. And I was never able to do any recovery on it, never able to find it. And less than a year ago, I happened to be on the internet and on a sale site. I happened to see that blanket in an estate that was being sold off. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and my beautiful bride was snoring, and I woke her up at 4 o'clock in the morning to say, may I spend some money? So I did, and I got it back, and very pleased to have it.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing, and it's great that it found its way back home. And it's just a great blanket, and I love it. It reminds me with just the strapping and the beads in it, reminds me of the old 18th century wampum belts.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a lot of that, but it's of course glass beads instead of shell beads, and it's Western as opposed to really the Eastern tradition and even a little earlier than the 18th century.
Actually, the Westerns got into the use of wampum belts also.
Did they?
Not to the extent. They were mostly traded from the Easterns, and they were used more to tell a story than they were for actual monetary trading value.
Well, and that's, that's great. I mean, because that's really what this blanket has just done for us too, is it's not only told a little bit of its historic story, but it's a little more of its modern history story as well. So thank you so much, Wendell, for sharing your treasures with us and sharing them with the public here. And thank you for explaining what we're looking at. And we'll see you again in another video with the bead going on very soon.
The beat goes on. The beat goes on.